Welcome to this episode of What's Happening in Waupaca. My name is Joni. Today we're going to be talking about suicide. So we're going to talk about who, as far as what are the risk factors involved. Then we're going to be talking about how to prevent it. How do you see it coming? Who can you talk to? And what can you do for that person? Because I think that information is hard to get. And then we're going to be talking about a very special talk coming up on September 10th.
Yep.
So our guests today are Mary Jo Tamaris. We have Jesse Cuff, and we have Jesse Jensen. So we're all here, so I want to kind of go around the table. Let's start with you, Mary Jo. Okay. What do you do? What do you do, and how do you fit into the Suicide Prevention Coalition?
Well, I was a school teacher for 32 years, and I retired last June. And my husband, Barry, is the medical examiner here in Waupaca County. And he was one of the people that started this way back in 2011. He was one of the initial core persons. And he's been involved in this since the very beginning. And he would always come home and he'd say, something like, well, I'm going to do this. Can you help me with this? Can you help me do this? And everything else. So when I was teaching, I had him doing everything for me. He had to help me with all my stuff. So I said to him, when I retire, I'm going to do whatever you want me to join, or I will help you with anything. I said, what do you want me to do? And he says, I want you to be a part of the Suicide Coalition. I said, I'm there for you. So that's how I got involved in it, just seen how it's developed since 2011, and since I'm retired, I have more time than all the rest of these people. They're busy working.
That's great. Welcome to our panel. This
Thank
is
you.
going to be exciting today. Jesse Cuff?
Yes, I'm the Waupaca County Veteran Service Officer. Of course, we all wear different hats on the coalition, so not only do I work with the veterans in the community, connecting them with benefits and services and their surviving family members and dependents, but I also bring the veteran perspective to the Suicide Prevention Coalition.
And we've had veterans on this show, and we've done shows about veterans, and really interesting, and I love that there's an office right here in Waupaca.
Absolutely.
That can be accessed.
Yep,
So.
right over there in the courthouse on the third floor. We're the first door on the left once you exit the elevators.
Perfect. Jesse Jensen.
Yes. I am a mental health professional in the community, just opened up a private practice in town a little over a year ago. And so I bring that perspective to the coalition and just offering what I can.
Fabulous, which is, I'm sure, a lot.
I try,
Bring
but
a lot to the table.
But like you said, we all put in and all wear our different hats, and I think it's just a good group of people. We have so many different people represented in our community, and it's an awesome thing to be a part of.
And I think that makes for the most successful coalitions or organizations is when you have people all contributing their different talents.
Yeah.
So.
And we are from countywide, so we have social workers and guidance counselors from the other school districts that are involved in it as well. So they're pulling in and bringing things to the table as well as like from New London, some healthcare workers from there too. So, so it's not necessarily just a Waupaca thing. It really is a countywide.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fabulous. So we're going to start this discussion with who, because I think that suicide is such a taboo subject. And I think that it is so misunderstood that I want to talk about who.
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question. I think there's so many different, populations of people that are represented in that.
There was something that was really interesting. One year we had Chester Markole. He was one of our speakers, and on the poster that year. Barry had this statistic and the saying that suicide has no face. Yeah. And in Waupaca County, there has been a suicide as young as 8 and as old as 83. Now this statistic was from like probably 2 years ago, so it could have changed by that. But he said that it hasn't. 8 has been our youngest.
Yeah.
So you just don't know who it's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it can really be anyone of all different populations, but there are certainly risk factors that we can look for when we're trying to identify someone that might be at risk. And we can probably all help and share, and we all have, like, again, different perspectives. And so a big one, and something that's been really big in our community recently, is talking about this connectedness. And specifically, risks for suicide would be lack of connectedness, meaning not feeling a part of a community or a friend group or any close relationships is a big risk factor for suicide, as well as hopelessness.
Yep.
That's another big one. So feeling like I've run out of options, I have nothing else to do, and I think that comes at a very different point for so many people on their journey. It can happen in the beginning, or it could happen after years of struggling with a mental health disorder.
And it's the isolation that even though we have all this social media that's out there, people still feel isolated, and they're not connecting personally. They're only doing what's on their FaceTime, or they're playing their games, or they're doing things on, that we're not just sitting and talking like you do like we are right now.
Right.
And you bring up a great point about the social media and the social isolation that comes with that, but then also the facade of the social media, right? Because nobody posts anything that's going wrong in their lives. Everybody's putting their best foot forward and their best, situation forward. And when somebody sees that, and their self-image or their perception isn't matching up with that, that can be fairly devastating. So we just want to make sure to talk about that, reach out to folks, connect to the community is a big part of what we do with the coalition, and try to reduce stigma, that idea that, talking about mental health, alcohol and other drug abuse, that those things are somehow taboo. We just need to talk about those things, and we need to work together as a community to positively address those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. So let's talk about veterans for a little bit, because we were talking before the show about, if there is a group of people, veterans are one of the groups of people that are at high risk. So tell me about why that is. And
Sure. Well, there could be several factors. The veteran community, probably it's a good starting place to maybe talk a little bit about where we're at with the veteran community in Waupaca County. So Waupaca County, in rough numbers, we're looking at about 50,000 citizens. Of that, about 10%, just under 5,000, are considered military veterans. So it's a significant cohort of the population of Waupaca County. And of course, veterans can be anyone that served from 18 years of age up to our oldest veterans in the community. We all know the Veterans Home at King, skilled nursing facility out there. So we really run the gambit of the age group, just like we talked about with the community that we serve through the Prevention Coalition. So it's mirrored there. Within that community, everybody kind of knows about the statistic, and we talked a little bit about that. The cohort of the veteran community, they say, and they is the VA. There's been two studies, a 2012 study and a 2016 study that the VA conducted. We have no reason to disbelieve what they've put out, but it's difficult. When you start looking at suicide prevention and the causes of suicide and studying the suicide issue, you quickly run into the idea that it's just very difficult to get all of the information together and get a real clear picture. And there's several reasons for that. But in the veteran community, they say 20 to 22 per day die by suicide. And that's a shocking statistic, and I think that the media has publicized that. Rightly, wrongly, or for the good or for the bad, I don't know. But I think it's an important number to understand a little bit, because that's a community you can kind of wrap your arms around a little bit and understand a little bit more. But what the CDC tells us is that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. So it's really, before you become a soldier or an airman, a sailor, a Marine, or airwoman, you're a citizen. And then once your service is over, you return to citizenship. So really, our military is reflective of our broader community. So that's almost more disturbing to think about it that way, because it's really sad. So in the veteran community in Waupaca County, that's one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about being part of the coalition, is just making sure that the veteran perspective and the culture of the veteran population is understood, is better understood in the community. Because if you talk about the word culture, nobody has a problem understanding that there are different ethnic cultures and there are different slices of the cultural pie, so to speak. But as soon as you mention veteran, people kind of think, well, what do you mean by veteran culture? Well, we have different language, we have different traditions, different values, different ways of interacting, arguably different values. So it's important to know those things, or at least have an awareness of and a respect for, those specific parts and pieces. And more specifically, talking about the suicide component, I don't know. I don't have a good answer as to why the veteran community seems to be overrepresented, but that's exactly what it is. If you look at the statistics and you dig into it, particularly into Wisconsin and Waupaca County, fully 1/3 of those that die by suicide in Waupaca County annually are military veterans. So, and statewide, veterans are overrepresented in those numbers, meaning that's one of those threads that you can pull on looking at statistics and see, well, that keeps coming up. It's just the veteran component is part of that. I know the association for Wisconsin, the County Veteran Service Officer Association of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs, the federal VA, we're all very committed to better understanding this issue and helping bring resources to bear to help folks. I guess what I would say, almost more importantly, is that if you are feeling socially isolated, reach out to your veteran community locally. Hopefully you've heard of me, or you've heard of the different veteran service organizations, and there are over 30 of them in Waupaca County, from the VFWs to the DAVs to the American Legions. We have a coalition that meets quarterly. Reach out to us, reach out to the coalition. One of the things that we know, or that I see nationwide that's working, other than therapy, other than seeking out actual providers for assistance, is, hey, help somebody else out, because then you become important in their life.
Right.
And it's a matter of getting out of yourself.
Yeah.
Get out of your own black hole.
Right.
And we all have days when we just feel hopeless.
Right.
And it doesn't go that far. But the easiest way, especially in my life, and I can only speak for myself, the easiest way to start to feel better is to get out of me and into something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of, I think Jesse mentioned, the coalition is trying to end stigma, and I'm definitely not an expert, with the veteran community, but have worked with veterans, and that stigma, I think, is a big piece that sometimes limits people from actually seeking the treatment that they need. And, we know that a majority of the people that do die by suicide haven't been in active treatment for whatever mental health condition they're dealing with. And so ending that stigma and just, opening that door for people, I think, is so big. And that's what I think the coalition does a really good job with.
And I think that's where we're going to end this segment, because we're going to come back into exactly that topic in our next segment, because we're going to be talking about prevention. How do we see it? What can we do? Not only as regular, normal people living our normal lives, but as professionals and as coalition members. So we've been talking about suicide. We talked a little bit about who, as far as what the risk factors are, really is more important. And we are going to talk about some prevention in the next segment. Stick around, we'll be back in just a moment. I am Joni, and you're watching What's Happening in Waupaca.
Whether enjoying a day of flying, group gatherings, one of 50 Cherokee Stashgasher EAA professional pilots, supporting the community, our local businesses, aviation groups, and pilots of the future. We are the Waupaca Municipal Airport at Brunner Field.
Welcome back to What's Happening in Waupaca. I am Joni. We are talking about suicide today, and we're doing it with the Suicide Prevention Coalition. We have Jesse Jensen, we have Jesse Cuff, and we have Mary Jo Tamaris here joining us. We started with our first segment just kind of talking about who is likely to do it, and what I heard was it runs the gamut. It really is anybody. It's more about talking about what is going on in their life. So there isn't a specific group of people who are, it's not like we can peg 16 to 18-year-old girls with that. But we are going to talk about, with you being a retired teacher, we're going to talk about kids in school and the social media and all of that here in a minute. But we're going to talk this segment about prevention. And that, I think, is about seeing the signs. How do we see them? How do we see them realistically? And how can we help? From me sitting on the sidelines to professionals, what is the best way? Because if we see a sign and we walk up in their face and say, you need counseling, we really haven't done any good, have we?
No.
So what do we do?
Okay, so one of the mission statements or purpose of the coalition is to educate. And we have a program, the QPR program, question,
Persuade.
persuade,
Refer.
QPR. And we have a couple of members in our coalition that are out there doing that. And the coalition, for 2 years, we had QPR training in Manawa. It was at the Masonic Temple, right?
So.
Yeah, so we did that for a couple of years, and we kind of stepped back from that, and now people are actually contacting us on our website or on our Facebook page asking if we would be able to have QPR training for their organizations. So we're doing a better job of getting that out, and now people know that we're doing that. So if any of you need QPR training, just let us know, and we'll make sure. So that, I think, is a nice thing for a person who's not in mental health to know about, the different things to look for, the questions to ask, and that's all part of the program. But maybe you can talk more about.
Yeah, some of the risk factors. I mean, again, it's not a perfect answer, right? So everyone looks a little bit different, but some of the things that we know, and please chime in, are when we start to giving things away is a big thing. If you notice that someone's been struggling, they've had something going on in their life, and now they're giving away valued possessions. That's something that raises some red flags. What else? What else do we have?
I was just thinking, their talk. Like, I might not be here.
Yes.
Veiled threats.
Yeah. So they're kind of giving you a little.
Is it the people who are constantly saying in one way or another, I'm going to commit suicide?
No. Usually, I mean, definitely, but I would say probably usually not. That it's not always a very verbal thing, because typically if someone is saying those things, we get them help.
Right.
We get them the help that they need, and then they're able to hopefully work through a lot of that stuff. So it's usually not the people that are out there saying, I'm going to commit suicide. It's the people saying, I might not be here in a few weeks, so if I'm not, this.
They've made up that mind,
Right.
Big changes. Anytime that we see big changes in, everybody has a baseline. And we all know the Eeyores out there, and all of a sudden that switch flips and it's like something's changed. It could be either really good, or maybe they made the decision and they've come to peace with that, and we kind of need to be on the alert for that. I was thinking while you were talking as well about the QPR. It's really CPR or mental health first aid. It's you've heard of CPR, and we know that that's the life-saving technique for heart attacks and things like that. QPR is kind of that CPR for mental health, that mental health first aid. It's the idea that the first part's sometimes the hardest, is asking the question very directly and saying, are you thinking about dying by suicide, or do you have a plan? And if you haven't practiced that, if you haven't thought through that, you're not likely to say it. So QPR really breaks down that for the individual and gives them those tools to be able to ask that question. A lot of times there's a misunderstanding out there that, well, if I talk to this person about it, I'm going to give them the idea.
I was thinking that exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know that's not true. And a lot of we talk too about, well, what about the individual who we've all heard somebody say it? I just go end it all. A lot of times, we watch TV all the time, right? We see people communicate brilliantly. Here's the problem. Not everybody does that. So a lot of times, that may be all the words they have to ask for help. So that's our opportunity to say, hey, look, can I help you with something? Is there some way we can address that or talk about that or get you some help? Or are you really thinking about that? And is that something that's really going on? Because let's work through it. And then staying with that person, persuading them, hey, look, we're in this thing now. Let's get you some help. I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm going to get you to somebody that can really offer some help, and this is fine, and then getting into that help, closing the loop, making sure that they're with that, whatever it is, provider, law enforcement, county crisis, somebody who can take over in a professional capacity and help, bring that situation to a good closure.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about, you're a retired school teacher, you work with teenagers, you were talking about social bullying. So I get it from the professional standpoint, but I'm a teenager in high school. So for me to go up to someone with that kind of verbiage and say, not going to happen, at least 99% of us aren't going to. So talk to me about it from a high schooler's perspective, and talk to us about what is going on with the social media bullying. Because when you said bullying is now 24/7, my mind said, was it ever not? Because I was a teenager once.
Sure. Yeah. I guess, when, it's just the dynamic of bullying has changed a lot recently with social media and, constant access to social media. So, a lot of times kids at least maybe were getting bullied in school, which still wasn't good, but they were able to go home and escape that, at least during the hours of, they were home with their families. Now kids have their phones all the time, and in school, in classes, kids are being bullied by someone else in a different class. So it's just happening all the time. It's happening during school, it's happening at home, it's happening in the middle of the night. It's just become a constant thing. And so I think, it can be hard, for a lot of our, youth nowadays to escape some of that.
Yeah, and there's studies out there, and I'm not as knowledgeable as the years and whatnot as my partner across the table. But there are studies out there that are showing that girls right now are at a real high risk with all the bullying that goes on. I mean, you've got the Twitter, you got the tweeting, you got the Instagram, you got the Snapchat, you have all of those things out there. And one of the things is they constantly have that phone with them. So that phone is underneath their pillow or it's right by their bedstand. They hear that thing, they look at it. And we don't, as a parent, you don't know what is being sent across to them.
Right.
And we just posted on our Facebook page, Kenosha Police Department, on the Suicide Coalition's Facebook page, 15 apps that are out there that people can track with. I mean, you have that going on as well, and then you have the human trafficking that's going on and what's being done that way, which is a whole nother segment or episode or whatever, so we won't go into that one. But I mean, all of these things are out there, and kids, they can't necessarily find their way out.
Right. And I think it's important too, that there are different forms of bullying, and so we have physical or aggressive bullying, and then we have verbal bullying, and those seem to be the two most common ones. But this unfortunately happens a lot with teenage girls, is gossip. And that's a big form of bullying that I don't think we recognize as bullying, but is huge,
Right.
right? And so that gossip is a big part of bullying.
Well, if you think about how much gossip hurts,
Right.
Yes.
it makes perfectly logical sense. So I'm in one of your classrooms, Mary Jo.
Oh, you poor thing.
I know. Well, you know. And I look the right age too, don't
Yes,
I?
you do, you do.
So I'm in one of your classrooms, and I know there's somebody in my class that isn't okay. What do I do?
As a student,
Yeah, what do I do? I mean, is it as simple as just taking the time to say hi, ask them how they are, just kind of at least
You
be
know,
acquaintances?
they-
Is it
sometimes they-
more complex
hurt.
than that? Do
It
I
does-
need to go to someone? What, I mean, what can I do as a
you know,
student?
there's so much out there that says that just saying hi to somebody, acknowledging somebody in the hallway, if you just look at somebody that looks like they're by themselves, to just go over and greet that. You see these stories that these athletes, and you know, we always put athletes way up here, but they're seems to be out there more than regular normal people, but of athletes going into schools and seeing kids sitting by themselves at the lunchroom table and they go sit next to them, what a great impact that is. And I think that one of the things is you have to have in a classroom in a school is you have to have a comfortable culture. And if kids don't feel that, they certainly gravitate to certain teachers. They gravitate to certain workers. You know, it may be the lunch lady. I mean, everybody loved Marlene Peterson, you know, as the lunch lady here in Waupaca. People go to talk to her all the time. And the kids just need to make a connection with somebody. And I think that that's so important. And you have to be willing to you know, you have to go outside of yourself. I'm not a morning person. I hate the mornings. You know, I'm just a terrible morning person. But when I walked in that school, I would try to say hello to every single kid that I saw. And that. And there was one day I was walking in and there was a girl standing by the locker. And I said, well, good morning. How are you doing today? And she looked at me and she said, you know, Mrs. Tamaris, 4 teachers walked past me today and you're the first one that said hello. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, thank God I said hello. You know? And
Kevin Heinz. We had Kevin Heinz, part of the Fall Talk 4 years ago.
2014.
Yeah. So he is an author and a speaker, and he's a survivor of. He attempted suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. So Waupaca, you know, the Suicide Coalition brought him to Waupaca and talked. And I think one of the biggest things from that talk that stood out to me was that he said, you know, that day I was walking up the bridge and I was crying. And if one person would have just stopped and smiled at me and said hi, I wouldn't have done it. But actually what happened wasn't there you know, someone who asked him to take a picture of them, but didn't say hello or didn't, you know, but just said, can you take a picture of us? And he did and kept going, but not one person, he was crying, visibly upset, and no one reached out. So it's not as simple as just saying hi, but sometimes.
That's all that it takes.
Yeah.
That's all that it takes. You know, and then in the classroom, as an educator, you know, we've had in-services and whatnot, and you see the child that's isolated, and you see that. But, you know, sometimes it's not that one. Sometimes it's the one that's always smiling. And they're the ones, that's why it has no face. It could be somebody that you're thinking, wow, they have everything going for them. And now what? You know, I mean, it's the popular people. So it's just it's a tough thing to actually really pin down. You really have to be a person that's just watching. And paying attention to what's around you.
That's stigma again, you know, ending that stigma. It's okay to reach out for help, and it's okay, you know, for your friend to be mad at you if you tell a teacher that you think something's going on, you know, so.
But it seems to be more about just listening to people and just trying to be nice. You know, and it seems like if I were a parent, what I could teach my kids is just be nice.
You know, not last year. It was my last year of teaching, so that would have been 2 years ago. The book Wonder came out with the boy that had the craniofacial abnormalities. Is that right? Yeah, I'm a teacher. And the whole book, the whole premise of the book was, it was bullying. It was a bullying book, just kindness. And I saw a whole different appeal in the classrooms on just be kind. You know, you just need to be kind. And you see those types of things on Facebook a little bit more, and people are just becoming more aware of, you know, you just have to be kind and nice. And if you don't have anything to say, just don't say it.
Right.
If you don't have something nice to say,
Exactly.
don't.
Isn't
I have a
when I was
sign.
little, that's what my parents always would tell me to say. You know.
I have a sign in my office, because nice matters.
Yes.
And it does.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
great. Okay, so it really is simple. It's simple for those of us that are watching. It doesn't have to be a professional thing. It really just is a matter of being nice. You know, stand up for some. I was good at that as a kid, but stand up for somebody who's getting teased that doesn't deserve
Right.
to be teased, and it just kind of flows through.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from the family and flows through to the school as much as the other way.
You know, and there's an understanding as well, because now something in the school, and this is now we have the transgender, and we have a new that have always been there, but now they're out there, and we have to make sure that we're looking at how they're feeling in the LGBTQ community. You know, so there's something else, and you know, it's just one of those things that as the world just keeps getting bigger, there's more things out there that we start to pay attention to a little bit closer.
And I just wanted to reiterate one thing that Jessie said that I think is so important, and something that I talk a lot about with parents or kids, that like if you think that someone is struggling, ask them directly, you know, are you thinking of killing yourself? Are you thinking of hurting yourself? And not being afraid to do it very directly, that's not going to force them into suicide. But so if you think that someone is struggling, ask them.
And you're going to get a straight answer?
Not always, but sometimes you do. And I think you'd be surprised, actually, when you are very direct about it, you get a pretty straight answer back. If you don't, you know, I would definitely keep an eye on them and maybe talk to someone else in their family, but you'd be surprised at how often you really actually do.
Yeah.
But if you don't get that answer, you can always go back the next day and
Yep.
say, how's it going? You know, so it's not something that is one and done. You know, I think it's nice to be able to follow up on that as well.
Yeah.
You know, and in education, we always look to see if they were going to harm themselves or if there was a harm to others. And then if there was a harm to yourself or harm to others, that's when you needed to intervene to make sure that you were going to take care of things. So, you know, but you have to do the follow through as well. I think that's something that's important too.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
What an interesting segment, talking about what can we do? How can we help? How can we approach someone?
Yeah.
We are talking about suicide with the Suicide Prevention Coalition, some members of. It's bigger than just you three.
Yes.
We are going to be back, and we're going to talk about a very special talk that's coming up in September during Suicide Prevention Week. That's national, I think.
Yes.
National Suicide Prevention Week?
Yeah, September is
Right.
Suicide Prevention Month, and then the week is always the first week in September, and the day is actually the Tuesday, so we can narrow it down.
That's good. So we're going to be back in just a moment, and we're going to be talking about the talk coming in September. I'm Joni. You're watching What's Happening in Waupaca.
Here's to the things that can keep us safe. Those we use all the time with hardly a thought. Those that are silently standing by to save our lives. And now, those that we carry with us everywhere we go. Many mobile devices will now bring you wireless emergency alerts, real-time information directly from local sources you know and trust. With the unique sound and vibration, you'll be in the know wherever you are.
Welcome back to What's Happening in Waupaca. I am Joni. Today we are talking with members of the Waupaca County Suicide Prevention Coalition. We have Jessie Cuff, we have Jessie Jensen, and we have Mary Jo Tamaris. So this segment, we really are going to focus on something called the talk. Right?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So tell me
The
what it
fall
is.
talk,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so every year the coalition does two events. They do a spring walk, which Jessie was in charge of this past year.
Yes.
And then we do a fall talk. So our fall talk is coming up on Tuesday, September 10th. And this year we're taking our we're taking it on the road. And we have done since 2014, all of them have been at the Waupaca County, or here in Waupaca. And we are actually going to Waupaca, Fremont. They built a new PAC, so they're thrilled to have us there. Jesse's wife, Heidi, is the chair of this committee, and she's part of Theta Care, and they have a 3-year program, and they had our speaker, his name is Mike McGowan, and he's a nationally known speaker, and he's going to come in and talk about the isolation epidemic, which goes with everything that we've talked about. Yep. And so he's going to be here on the 10th, and he's going to talk about how right now the average child spends more time in front of a screen than sleeping, and their parents are on their phones.
I read that today and just about fell out of my chair. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so he's going to talk about, and in the very first segment, we talked about the community connectedness. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be talking about how are we going to get back to that. Now, just because it's in Waupaca doesn't mean that it has to only be Waupaca people. Yeah. So we hope to have a real good crowd there. And so we've got a few different things going on. His thing with being connected and that we're going to have a social thing starting at 5:30, and then that's going to go till about 6:15 or so. And then Mike McGowan's going to talk until about 7 o'clock, and then from 6:45 or so, and then afterwards, we're going to have a number of tables, of resource tables, where people, not resource tables that, they're going to give you ideas of what you can do as a family, what you can do to connect again. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for different organizations that are going to come in and share, the libraries, I think we have NAMI coming in talking about activities that they have. CAP Services, I believe, is going to be there, and looking to see what you can do rather than being in front of that screen and that isolation. Yeah. So, and we've got a couple of signs that we're going to be selling that to get in the yards. You've seen these, so we've got hashtag Be the Change, hashtag Unplug to Connect, that we're hoping Love Life, hashtag, yeah, so we're hashtagging everything. You are amazing, because we all need to have that positive pat on the back, dream big, share your sparkle. So we're hoping that Theta Care joined us with this and with this campaign, and we're hoping to sell these, and that people will put them in their yards, and it just makes people, dream big. Share your sparkle.
So are you selling these then at the talk on September 10th?
At the talk.
Because I want one of each of. I got a big yard.
Really?
These are what a cool thing. I live out in Podunk, but what a cool
Podunk
thing
people
to
drive
have.
out there.
Hey, all my neighbors drive by.
That's right. That's
And
right.
they'll stop and bully me for having signs in my yard. I don't know. Did either you, Jessies, have anything you want to add to the fall talk? Quickly?
I've seen Mike speak before, and he does a brilliant job, and he's just the perfect speaker for this topic. So we're really encouraging everybody. It's free. Come on out. You're not going to lose anything by coming out and just meeting with your community and listening to Mike talk about this very important topic.
Yeah. Talking about the connectedness, and that's going to be what he's talking about, but coming to an event like this is how we get connected. So just being there is being part of a community in the greater Waupaca County area, and so just being a part of that is a step in the right direction. So
fabulous. Yeah. So it's not only important to see it and to try to do something about it, but let's get back to talking to each other instead of typing.
Yeah, right.
Is that a good place to start with this?
Real good.
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Put the phones down?
Yeah.
You can't see anything if you're looking right here.
That's right.
Exactly. Miss a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You do. I agree. Mm-hmm. You do miss.
You're looking for those signs and you miss them.
That's right.
I hear you.
You got to listen.
Thank you to the three of you. Thank you, Mary Jo. Thank you, Jessie. Yeah. Thank you, Jessie. for being here today. It was a great show. Would love to see you guys back. I know that you have some other people that you would love to bring with you, so that would be a great thing too. Thank you for watching.
don't
And
forget-
for caring. And Mary Jo would like to add
I
something.
would just like to add something. We have a Facebook page, so
Yeah,
it's
check us out.
Waupaca County Suicide Prevention Coalition Facebook page, as well as waupaca-saves.org as a website. So you can get, even though we're telling you not to go on screens, we're still out there.
We know you're going to be on screens.
Yeah.
It's a matter of making sure that you have some moderation between
Right,
one
exactly.
and
Exactly right.
the other. And you can Google, because I did today, Waupaca County, because I needed to find something on you, and what comes up, there's our Facebook page, and
Yeah.
here's our website, and you can get all the information.
Thank
So
you.
Yeah, yeah.
thanks, guys, for being here.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you so
topic.
much.
Thank you very
Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Happening Waupaca. We'll see you next time. I'm Joni.